There is utter confusion here in SAFIZON, as the condition of Empress Jamyl SARUM remains unknown after a Titan carrying the Empress was destroyed by Drifter forces just a few minutes ago. The Empress was to attend the inauguration of the new Imperial flagship, the Arcturus, at the SAFIZON headquarters of the Imperial Navy. Traveling in the SERAPH, an Avatar-class Titan, the Empress was believed to be well protected and accompanied by a formidable escort. Despite this, the SERAPH came under attack from a large Drifter force, appearing almost immediately after the Empress arrived in SAFIZON. Imperial guards attempted to intercept the attackers, but the Drifters used new tactics in their assault, utilizing their superior speed to head straight for the SERAPH while ignoring all other ships. Within a matter of seconds, the SERAPH was completely engulfed and obliterated by simultaneous fire from the entire Drifter force. It is obvious that the Empress was the sole target, and once the SERAPH was destroyed, the Drifters warped away without concern for any other ships present. The speed and precision the Drifters displayed while executing their plan seems to have stunned the Imperial Guard, as they were unable to react in time to put up any defense during the short but devastating attack. While search and rescue efforts are still underway, there have been no announcements made, nor have we been able to confirm anything regarding the condition or whereabouts of Empress Jamyl SARUM. We will of course keep on reporting as the situation develops. This is Alton Havery, reporting for the Scope.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the Galetea lore panel presented by Hydrostatic Eve. Thank you all for coming. It is an amazing lore panel that we have before us. We have some old faces and we have some very, very special guests on this lore panel. So before I even get into all of that, Phi, why don't you introduce us all to our panels?
So like you said, we have some old faces. We have Anslo, at Anslo Scope on Twitter. He's the CEO of Scopeworks, a notable bad poster, the most hated man in LowSec, and he wants to remind you that Scopeworks is recruiting. We have Uriel, the dreamy lore guy, Anteovnuecci. That's at ANTEOVNUECCI on Twitter. He's an archivist and emergent event analyst at JLab and a Jove lore specialist. He's often seen participating in live events and Eric Jalan projects and can always be found writing, sketching, or modeling some idea or another, not just on paper, but also at Eve New England. We have Ascentior, at Ascentior on Twitter, Admiral of Pi Inc., and he is the Honorary Fabricator General of the Imperial Navy. We have General Stargazer at blind_hope on Twitter. He's the CEO of Fcord and operator of the live events in-game channel and also the live events channel in the Tweet Fleet Slack. And apparently he is the General of CCP Falcon's Heart. We have Eve Rhavas, at Eve_Rhavas on Twitter. He's the author of the Interstellar Privateer blog, a Shattered Planet, Wormhole Lore, and Tinfoil Hattery specialist, and a member of the C5 Wormhole Alliance Sleeper Social Club. We have Makoto Priano, at Makoto Priano on Twitter, CEO of Itsukame Zainu, a lore and exploration-focused corporation. Mac is generally drifter savvy and has had some run-ins with Concord, haven't we all? And Ikame is recruiting. We have Morwen Lagann, at Morwen Lagann on Twitter. He's the CEO of Tyrathleon Interstellar, a small RP and lore and PvE-focused corporation in Rote Capel. He's an Eric Jalan archivist and lore generalist, and he helps run a number of RP community venues, including the OOC forums at Backstage. And then we have Samira Kernher, at Samira Kernher on Twitter. She's an Amarian lore expert and member of PIE. She runs the Jonas for Emperor YC118 fan site at jonasforemperor.org. And then, as Ash said, we have some brand new panel members, some special guests. We have CCP Affinity, who is at CCP_Affinity on Twitter. She's the game designer for Team Space Glitter, Queen of the Drifters, one of the devious masterminds behind the new AI. She also likes rust buckets, which is to say Minmatar ships, and this may explain why she was the last and best pilot of the TES SERAPH. We have CCP Delegate Zero at CCP Delegate Zero on Twitter, a longtime supporter of the lore within CCP. He has the best beard on the panel, which he strokes diabolically while plotting. And then we have CCP Falcon at CCP_Falcon on Twitter. He's the community manager for the EVE universe, former leader of Veto, and he is a Garistas enthusiast. His life will be complete when EVE Valkyrie brings the Garistas lore to the forefront. And that is the panel that we have for you today.
Excellent. Thank you, Phi, and thank you for all of our panelists for coming. And a special thank you for CCP for asking us to put this together so that way you can come on and tell us what you're going to tell us. So before we get started, since there's obviously a lot of meat to cover, we kind of want to start out the same way that our podcasts do, with a question for the panel. It's more of a softer question as we have our harder questions for later. But it'll give everybody an opportunity to talk and let you kind of know the difference between everybody's voices. So our question for the panel today, given the fact that this is happening in the middle of the AT, I'm going to ask our panelists, what is your favorite AT team? And with the caveat that some of our panelists may not necessarily be paying attention to the AT, or maybe their AT teams have already been knocked out. So without any judgment as to your choice, Anslo, why don't you get this started? Who is your favorite AT team?
NC Dot, personally, because ACMAC Logi is the best Logi, unless, Shadow Cartel bombs are coming at them.
All right, Uriel.
I don't think I'm really well informed enough to know my favorite. I've paid attention, but not enough to the teams.
Very well. Ascentior?
I think it would be remiss of me not to give a shout out to our brothers over at Curatus Veritas Alliance, but I'd also like to say probably Brave Elective, because the fact that they've got some new pilots in there I think is pretty cool for EVE.
Very cool. Rhavas?
Well, of course, I'm crushed that Sleeper Social Club didn't make it through the lottery process. But in their absence, I've been a longtime fan of Agony, who always puts on a good showing and does some pretty clever stuff in the AT.
All right. Makoto?
Cheers. I think I'm going to have to be the one that goes with Camel. In the first place, their ads are amazing. In the second place, they are a brilliantly performing team. And in the third place, they totally got us yachts. And I will forever be in debt for them for getting me a yacht.
All right. Morwen?
Well, I'm kind of obligated to say Rote Capel, even though we did get knocked out this morning. But, failing them, I actually would also join Makoto in saying Camel, because they are a very, very strong team. And I would love to see them win again.
Samira?
Well, I'm a bit obligated to support CVA, but they're out. So I supported Rote Capel, but they're out. So right now, I'll just hedge my bets on Camel like everyone else.
Samira, the voice of doom.
I gotta say now, if Camel gets knocked out, like in the next round or something, we'll know why. All right, so let's check out what CCP has to say. You can choose to weigh in or not. CCP Affinity?
I'm going to go with Warlords of the Deep, because it has all the Hydra Reloaded guys.
And DelegateZero?
I'll go with Camel, like last year, primarily on the strength of their adverts.
And Falcon?
I was hoping Rote Capel would go further than they did. They're all the wingmen of mine, but seeing as though they spooned it so badly today, it's they're out. So I guess I'm going for Camel as well.
All right. Well, I'm going to say that I'm going to go for End of Life Alliance because obviously Random McNally, who is a co-host for Hydrag, who I'm good friends with, is piloting in that group, and they're doing very well actually. So let's hope that keeps up. All right, well, on to some housekeeping. A couple of notes to bring up before we jump in. First of all, it has now been confirmed that all three of the major panel holders or podcasters for Hydrostatic are all going to be at EVE Vegas. So myself, Phi, and Locke will all be present in EVE Vegas. We'll try to do something cool. We will have stickers to give out. So hope to see you guys there. Likewise, also Mark726, who is not on the panel right now, but is with us in spirit and bugging us in Slack, And Mac will also be at Vegas, and Mark726 will be doing a lore presentation. So for those of you who really want to get caught up in the lore and don't want to go through 8 hours of lore panels, that's probably a really good place to check out. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into the topics of the week. And unfortunately, this has only been a couple of weeks since the last lore panel, so bear with me, guys. I don't think we're going to have enough to talk about to fill the entire panel, but we'll try. So, has anything significant happened recently?
Funny you ask.
All right,
nothing's happened.
In all reality, okay, so last Friday at 1800 hours, Jamyl SARUM appeared in her Titan at SAFIZON and was assassinated by the Drifter fleet. First of all, who all was everybody on the panel there?
No.
Probably easier to ask who wasn't there because I know a number of us were.
Okay. So, but for those of you who were there, what exactly happened?
Well, we formed up fleets a little over an hour beforehand, so there was a few different fleets in local. I'm pretty certain Spectre fleet was there, CVA had a fleet, Pi had a fleet joint with SERAPH and a few other guys, mostly Amarian loyalists and just a few people that we picked up from local. And there was also the guys that run FCORD. They had a fleet for people in local as well. There was also some red entities there, like there was some Minmatar militia and some other people that we have as war targets, but that list is long and not very dignified, so I don't remember them all. So we all formed up, waited around for Her Highness to appear. And eventually a Titan appeared on field. We saw her in local first, and then a Titan appeared on field with her SUCAP support. She started speaking. In fact, I don't have what she said at hand, but she started speaking, but was cut off mid-sentence as a fleet of about 100 drifters warped in. And in seconds, they locked her Titan and all fired their doomsdays at once and alphaed the Titan. So in one hit, the Titan was popped. There was a whole lot of screaming on voice comms. There was a lot of people who didn't quite believe what happened. The pod popped out, and quite quickly, the pod, as fast as the Titan was locked and popped, so was the pod, and again, all by the drifters.
Actually, that's an interesting question. What were the last words of Jamyl SARUM the First?
She was basically about to talk about how Amar's technology is the best in the cluster.
It was our superior force and technology.
Irony strikes again.
Yes. For those of you who do not know, this event occurred at the end of, I think, was it about a 4-stage live event that's been going on for the last month, surrounding the creation of a new Imperial Navy Abaddon, which we talked about last time, called the Arcturitas. Friday was supposed to be the launch of the Arcturitas, and it's worth noting, I think, that we never actually saw the physical ship. So as it is right now, we have reason to believe that the Arcturitas is quote-unquote completed by the Amar Navy, but we, as Capsuleers, have never seen it in space. So I guess one of my first questions, I'm going to turn over to our CCP members and see if Affinity, you want to talk about that event from your perspective. We've now heard about it from the perspective of the Amar loyalists, but what about from the perspective of the wicked drifters?
Well, I didn't get to see most of the event because I was actually flying the Titan, so for most of it I was just gone. But I got to put in the last words of Jamyl SARUM, so that was quite interesting. And her last words were, "You will bear witness to the might and peerless technology of Holy Amar as we," and then she blew up.
That is, I ain't gonna lie, that gives me chills. But okay, so if you weren't controlling the drifters, who was?
That was the wonderful CCP Paradox, and he has been a huge help for all these events that we've done with the drifters. But he brought in 100 drifters, and it was slight modification to their AI, because normally when a drifter comes in, you have to attack them, get down their first layer of shields, and then they will fire their super weapon at you. But we've modified the AI slightly to enable them to just fire their super weapon straight away if they so choose.
That's not scary at all. So how much would you say of that event? So the drifters warped in. Now, I noted that the drifters warped in about 3 different sets of probably about 30 drifters each. And then they all shot as one, and then they warped off in about 3 sets each. So how much of that was directly controlled by an actor, and how much of that was controlled by the AI?
Well, the drifters aren't controlled by an actor as such. I mean, we spawned the groups of the drifters, but the rest of it was pure AI.
So they made the choice based on their own rules to primary Jamyl, destroy her, pod her, and then leave?
Yep. There was a lot of nerves beforehand because we didn't quite know if it was going to work.
So I guess my next question is, since this is a new tactic, is this a new tactic that we're going to see, or should we expect to see that among drifters moving forward?
I think you should just wait and see.
Now I'm terrified. All right, so anything else that CCP wants to throw in there about this live event?
I think the one thing we would like to confirm is that Jamyl SARUM is dead. We're not going to resurrect her for the second time. She is not returning. She is dead.
Wow. Okay. So what you're saying is confirmed. So I guess what I've been basically telling people is, although she is in fact an illegally cloned capsuleer, even if she was to have survived, basically the rest of her life is going to be laying low because she can never show her face among the Amar Empire again. So even if she isn't dead, she's effectively dead. But it sounds to me like you are saying that she is corpse in the ground, failed to clone, dead.
She is corpse in a mysterious location, dead.
Very, very... Affinity, you're now starting to mess with me.
Class act.
All right, so after that happened, the Amar Navy scrambled to defend the borders, which is fairly typical. And they, the thing that I noticed was, well, there was 2 commanders that were kind of talking back and forth. I think that they were piloting Aeons, but I'm not 100% sure. If one of the more Amarian people could talk about who those people were and why they were important really quickly.
Basically, they were Jamyl's escort. They were members of the SARUM family, based off the skins they were using on the ships. We don't really have much background on them that I know of, beyond them just being her personal escort.
Okay, so these are not people that we've seen before, necessarily?
No, aside from the other events when they were also escorting her.
Okay. And then also, they eventually stood down the fleet, but before they did, who appeared to be in command after Jamyl was killed, the person who seemed to be in charge said to do Operation Gravity Well. So we will definitely, I guess we could showcase some of our tinfoil now, or we can save it for later. But does anyone have any definitive idea as to what this could mean? Is there, or actually a better question would be, have we had operational names of Amar operations spoken about in the lore in the past? And what kind of previous names and operations have we had? Anslo?
Actually, Ascentior raised his hand first, so I think he should probably get first.
You're right. Ascentior.
Yeah, but I don't know the answer to that question because I haven't noticed any operational names in the past, but in tinfoilery to that particular operation name, It sounds pretty much like it's a gravity well, as in a vacuum of power. So I think it's regarded to making sure that while there is no definitive emperor, that operational matters change so that they can keep peace within the empire, this gravity well.
That's an interesting theory, and that is different from what I expected. Anslo, you got another theory?
Actually, mine was basically the same as Sienter's, as Sienter's, sorry. When you got that kind of power vacuum and you have the different struggles and fights within Amar and all those interfactions and all those houses and things like that, I mean, you're gonna have people clamoring for power. I mean, obviously you can't just go and say, ha, I got to the top of the hill first, I'm the emperor. There's all kinds of little bits of politics and all these other small subtleties that people have to go through, but with Operation Gravity Well, like what Ascentior was saying, is probably taking some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just safeguards in terms of laws and securing certain people to ensure that some kind of hostile takeover, some kind of subtle political takeover by one of the houses doesn't occur, be it by influence, force, or whatever.
All right, so we're going to jump over to Morwen and then head over to, because he's got a response to Anslo, and then probably to Samira.
Yeah, we know that they have very, very clear procedures for who's in charge in this kind of situation. It's in this case, it goes straight to the Chamberlain, and so there, I don't necessarily know if it's some sort of defensive operation, but there's really no need to worry about any kind of immediate struggle for power because we know that there is a very clear chain of command. If the emperor or empress is unavailable or unable to perform their duties, the Chamberlain takes over in the interim, which is how we ended up with Karsoth for however long it was.
Right. Okay, so then, Samira, you have something to contribute?
Yeah, all the power vacuum makes a lot of sense because it's a gravity well. There's also the fact that it was a order from the Ministry of War Command, which means that it was not just about the civilian government, but also about the military, which means that it's likely, like a gravity well, sucking in, consolidating, and defending the core worlds, focusing on preventing the Empire from destabilizing and going into chaos. Also, other names that we've heard in recent lore was that there was Operation Light Wielder in a few weeks ago, which was the Amar Navy intelligence operation where they went around attacking drifters to collect intelligence and to find out their capabilities.
I'm sorry, can you say once again, so just so that everyone knows, last time we did a show, Samira had some audio issues, and we've worked really hard to make it work, but it came in a little bit garbled when you said the specific name of the previous operation. So can you say that again?
Sorry, Lightbringer.
White Witch? Can you type it out?
Lightbringer.
Oh, Lightbringer. Okay, great. All right, so we've had another operation before called Lightbringer, which was an intelligence operation, and now we have Operation Gravity Well. So we move now to Mac. You have something to throw in there.
So, quick heads up, it is worth noting that when they were pinging Minwarcom, they were also activating the border forces. And the basic idea there is that in the case of a decapitation strike, you may aim to not only kill the command, but also anyone who's next in the chain. And there is always danger of other forces capitalizing on the instability caused by this, not just internally, but also, for instance, with, say, like the Republic fleet attempting another invasion or that type of thing. So I'm sure that they've got protocols in place to ensure that the fleet mobilizes at the instant of the beginning of any sort of instability to ensure that the Republic fleet doesn't capitalize on that instability.
Yep, and I'm also going to throw in there that one of the highest priorities of the fleet was not only securing the borders, but also securing all of the heirs, which of course would make a lot of sense because one of those heirs is going to be the new emperor. Okay, so Fi, you have something to throw in.
Yeah, I largely agree with Makoto that it was more about securing a single planet, basically pull the ships back to the gravity well and defend that planet from any further threats. Because unlike a lot of the rest of the panel, I don't think like a gravity well to me is the opposite of a power vacuum. You don't have a gravity well unless there's something big there already. So I think it's probably just the simple, pull back and defend Athra.
So I've got a question. I'm going to go a totally different direction with this, and you're going to tell me why I'm wrong. So what if, thanks to the intelligence on the drifters are coming through wormholes to do their incursions. What if Operation Gravity Well is some sort of counterstrike against the drifters that have been held in reserve as they were analyzing the real threat? And now that it is obvious that, quote unquote, the drifter threat is not contained, they are now basically doing their high level operation to strike back. All right, no one has any sort of complaints against my theory, so it's okay, Mac, what you got?
So the major thing is that we've seen the drifters using the drifter hives as a staging area per the Two Coast broadcast, but after that we had thought they were sort of dispersed throughout New Eden using the unidentified wormholes, harvesting observatories, etc., etc. We have no idea where they're actually doing production, whether it's at the hives or elsewhere, or where they're staging at the interim, because we obviously haven't found what's obviously a fleet staging area. So the idea that the Amar would be launching an attack against this staging area, it seems a bit bold.
I'm not necessarily suggesting that they would be making a attack against the staging area. That doesn't seem to be suggested. What I'm saying is that if they can actually make an attack against the wormholes that are being used for the incursions, they could collapse them and therefore take out their ingress.
Yeah, and that does dovetail with a question that I end up having. In the last SAFIZON attack on the 14th, Coretta was saying that Amar border control was reporting the approach of additional drifter forces, etc., etc., which raises the question of okay, well, how are they detecting this? How are they identifying the location of ingress? But collapsing wormholes, unless you're critting them, we don't know any current methods to do that.
Maybe they can just blow up the stabilizers. All right, so over to General Stargazer.
All I was going to say as well is if they have immediately just lost their Empress, I think the idea of an immediate counter-strike back by the leader of the Navy may not exactly have been the best decision to be perhaps making. That the idea of trying to sustain and keep going the current safety and security of the Empire would be the most sort of critical thing to them. Perhaps long-term after that.
All right, so Uriel's got something to throw in, and then we're going to move on to the next piece of this event.
Yeah, I was just saying, in connection to what General Stargazer was saying, I really don't think the Amar are going to be making an aggressive move right now. And with what might be on the way, it seems that isn't the case, so yeah.
All right, very well. All right, so now let's move on to, I think, what personally for me is the most important part of the Jamyl assassination, at least for us at this exact time, which is, as Affinity coyly pointed out, we actually do not know where her corpse is. She has been killed and she has been potted. We have the kill mail and for both the ship and her pod, so we know what implants she had and all that stuff. However, there is no sign of who has the corpse. I don't know whether or not that really needs to be up for a discussion, although Mac, you've got something to say about the corpse.
So with regard to the corpse, I do just want to put a quick shout out there. We are very interested in getting access to it, getting a hold of it. If some lore savvy people get a hold of the corpse, there can be no end of shenanigans, so please do get in contact if you have the slightest inclination as to who took it or where it is. We've got some people looking at all the various videos and streams and pictures taken of the event, and we've got a few suspect ship types, but we still need to put names to those, so please do get in touch.
So I just want to announce, and we can we're definitely going to talk about this later, but while we're talking about the corpse, we'll announce this now. Hydrostatic Eve is working with Pi and several of the other lore community, and we will be placing a very large bounty. We're not 100% sure how large, but we're going to be putting a large bounty on the corpse of Jamyl SARUM. Our goal is to secure the corpse of the late Empress, and then allow access to some of our scientific people to do a basic autopsy so that we can determine what we know about the Empress and kind of the state of things. And then the plan is to hand her her corpse over to Pi for proper whatever they do with it. So we will be working with Pi and with other people who wish to help. So if you do want to help in this effort, please get a hold of me. If you have the corpse, you can contract it to Ashtarothi, and we will reward you greatly. Is there anything else that anybody wants to throw in about the corpses, or about the corpse, or the alive event itself? Ascentior.
I'd be really interested to see if Concord or DED or any of the other entities who have power in this matter actually take steps themselves, considering they were really keen to the tune of 150 plex and negative standings to scientists who had a brain slice. I'd hope that pales in insignificance to the steps that they would take to get the corpse of the Empress back.
I think that we should outdo them, but we'll see.
I think that if anyone was to get a hold of the corpse and was to start fiddling around with it, I'm sure the Empire would have something to say about it, I would imagine.
Very likely, but we'll have to see. So right now, as I said, the corpse is at an unknown location. A player very likely has it. It does not appear to have been destroyed, and it was not taken by any of the NPC actors. Isn't that correct? You can confirm that, right, CCP?
Yeah, absolutely. Or could be anywhere.
There you go. So there is a corpse out there ready to be gotten. So with that, we can move on to the next piece, which is kind of where do we go from there? And so now, as we mentioned, there is a power vacuum within the Amar Empire, and we have a process by which the new emperor is chosen. Now, it is worth noting that the Amar Empire is not Westeros, and therefore they do not have like the same sort of like nobility. I am the son of this person, therefore I have that right. There is an heir to the SARUM family now that Jamyl has passed on, but that heir does not automatically gain emperor status in the same sort of way. So, Samira, what do you want to say? You want to explain what happens next?
Yeah. Basically, in the Amar succession, it's less of a hereditary monarchy and more elective, or like a tanistry, where each family, through various methods that are based on the individual house customs, choose an heir from within their number. Often it's the current heir who nominates the next heir. And those heirs in a succession, they compete against the other heirs according to rules set down by the succession committee. These rules vary each succession. Last time there was a championship, but that was actually rather new at the time and fairly controversial. Before that, they did other things. This time it seems to be another championship, as we have seen announced.
Right. Okay. So in the past, one second. So in the past, we've had obviously successions in for various emperors in lore. However, in the last imperial succession, they opted to have players champion for various heirs. And it sounds like we're going in that direction again. Is that why don't one of the Pi folks kind of talk about that? Is this kind of the new typical way for heirs to be chosen, or is this kind of like what should we think of the succession trials? I guess is a good way of asking that. Go ahead, Ascentior.
What we should think of the succession trials, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but I think it is at least going to be the standard. It's a great idea. I think it's great because it includes the players. I'm not sure if anyone remembers what happened last time, but they chose player champions, and those player champions fought it out to decide the new emperor, which lasted a long time. And there was awards given to the players that took part. So I think it's great that the decision is going to fall upon the players in some regard. We actually get to move the story forward and be involved with it again.
Yep. I also think it's worth noting that the succession trials that the players took part in was not only 10 years ago, but it actually is 2 emperors ago. The previous, Empress Jamyl did not win the succession trials, and therefore was not the empress due to winning the succession trials. She was installed as empress because her return was seen as a miracle from God, and so was seen by the Theology Council as mandate for her right to rule.
Which is comforting to know that if we screw up and get it wrong, CCP will just fix it anyway.
Yes. All right, so we have the basic rules for the succession trials in place. We know that Capsuleers can sign up. They have to have a positive Amar standings, and they can only fly Amar ships during the challenges. Is that all we pretty much know about the rules? Is there anything that we can expect from the previous one, or is it pretty much up for grabs at this point? Oh, sorry. Also, members of the succession trials have to have a passport, and that's because there's going to be a physical representation of the succession trials, as they are going to have the finals of the succession trials occur at FanFest. So the finalists, presumably 5 of them, but who knows, will be flown to Iceland and put up for FanFest, which I think is pretty cool. Mac, you got something to say?
No, that was emoticon.
Oh, okay. CCP, do you have anything that you want to throw out there about the succession trials? Did I get all the details correct?
Yeah, so there was a little bit of confusion around the FanFest stuff. Like, people were sort of wondering what the deal was with people coming out to FanFest. So we can clarify that a little bit. So what will be happening is we'll have the Amar Championships will run, and then we'll basically eliminate down to 2 houses. And then from there, we will actually be flying 10 people out to FanFest. And that will be 5 from the 2 finalist houses, who will then fight it out on stage live at FanFest. Probably in either a best of 3 or a best of 5 to crown the new emperor or empress, basically. And by bringing people out to FanFest, we mean that we'll basically give the same package that we actually give to CSM members, which is you will be flown out for the duration of FanFest. So we'll cover your flights, we'll cover the accommodation, and an all-access pass to FanFest as well. So that's kind of the deal that's on the table for the 10 people who make it to the final.
Very cool. So by the time we get to the finals, there's going to be 10 players and 2 heirs eligible, basically, for the trial. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. And we should know that by the end of the year. And then from there, the finalists will then come out to FanFest next April and duke it out on stage.
So before I open this up to the panel to ask and comment, I want to remind everybody that a lot of the details for the succession trials are still not being discussed because the AT is currently ongoing, and CCP has on several occasions pointed out that they do not necessarily want to be managing 2 rule sets at a time. So that being said, Morwen, do you have a question?
Yeah, mostly just because you're saying you're bringing out 10 players for 2 houses. Can you tell? Does that say that there's still going to be people fighting each other to be one-on-one, or is that going to be? Is this going to be a team thing like the last Succession trials were? Or can you even answer that?
Right now, the format's still undecided, but we're potentially, we're floating the idea right now of it being something similar to the New Eden Open, where it's a 5v5. But right now, we're in a position where we're sort of deciding on what the rule set will be, so that's why we're not really talking about it yet.
Okay.
So, but who wants to talk about, who here knows about the 5 heirs and kind of want to introduce us to them? So just so that you know, in the background, Ascentior just volunteered Samira to answer that question. So Samira, why don't you tell us about the heirs?
There are 5 heir families. It's Ardashepper, Tashmerkan, Kador, SARUM, and Korazor. And these are 4 of the houses have been around for a while. Tashmerkan is relatively new. They were only added about 300 years ago when the Khanid left, when they rather rebelled, because Khanid did not want to kill himself during Hydaren's succession. Did you want me to go into what each house stands for, or just...
Yeah, I mean, presumably for the next 6 months, we're going to be getting fairly intimate with these 5 houses. So what can we expect from each of them if they are kind of to become emperor?
Basically, by standard politics, I guess, the houses are divided into conservatives and liberals. Conservatives prefer to uphold traditional values, while the liberals want to reform and move closer to, the rest of New Eden. The conservative houses are Ardashepper, SARUM, and Kador. Ardashepper are the religious conservatives. Kador are about the glory and grace of Amar itself. And SARUM are the warmongers. Meanwhile, with the liberals, there is Korazor, who is basically the diplomats. They believe in working with the other nations of New Eden. And then there's Tashmerkan, who are the capitalists, who are basically opportunists looking to get whatever they can get.
And who are you backing?
As stated in the introduction, I've already put together a support website for Giannis Ardashepper, because I prefer to see Amar return to the glory that it was supposed to have.
Very cool. Okay, so does anybody else have a favorite heir as we're discussing this?
So, quick question here.
Sure.
So, King Khanid has been reintroduced to the Privy Council. So, is he not in the running for heir? And this is a question for CCP. Is he out? I mean, I know that he, avoided the whole ritual suicide thing before. So, what does that mean for his candidacy now?
And the elephant in the room storms in.
It's one hell of a China shot.
Yeah, I can speak to that. Basically, in the Theology Council and the Privy Council in-game are in the process of considering that issue, and we are too.
So what I'm hearing is that if any players have strong feelings in one way or another, now is the time to make your argument cogently made on the in-game forums.
I think people should feel free to make in-character petitions to the Theology and Privy Councils if they feel strongly about this.
All right.
Actually, I wanted to point out that heirs themselves, as individual heirs, will be choosing their champions. And people, they are individuals, and it would be advisable for people to research the background of the heirs, because they will be making choices in part according to their background.
Yes, actually, there was a huge blowback because the rules say that anyone who is positive standing with Amar can fight, and so there's a bunch of Amar loyalists, including some in this channel, who feel that non-true Amar should be able to fight on behalf of a champion. But at this point, I would like to encourage everyone who's in the war community to take a deep breath and realize that there is there's a difference between eligibility and actually being chosen.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, there's a couple of aspects to making that choice. The first thing is we don't want to exclude a huge amount of the player base from taking part. That's just sensible for us to do so that we get a really good show. And the other side of it is as well that some of the Amar families, some of the royal families are a lot more conservative than others. And maybe some of the heirs will feel that they want to, have people who are of Amar blood represent them. But some of the more kind of liberal heirs, some of the people who are less conservative might feel that, they've got their best chances if they have people who are Amar loyalists or who are Amar citizens, but are not necessarily of Amar heritage.
And I actually have a question for clarification for CCP. When you say positive standings with Amar, do you mean literally positive 0.01 will qualify you? And do you have any plans for if somebody disqualifies themselves during the tournament?
Super simple. I mean, like, if it's positive, meaning it's higher than 0.00, then yes. And if someone drops their Amar standings during the Amar championships, then they're pretty dumb.
You heard it here first. Lose your standings because you're dumb. All right, let's see. Do I have anything else to clean up? Mac, do you have anything to say before we go on?
I think we're clear.
And Ascentior, do you have anything to throw in there?
No, I think it's all pretty spot on.
Very cool. So the succession trials will be occurring over the next 6 months, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it. CCP, do you have anything else that you want to throw in there about it before we move on to the next topic?
And just keep watching the in-character news, keep watching the devlogs feed. Right now, like CCP Logibro said, and like we've all been saying, we're pretty busy with the Alliance tournament and getting that out smoothly. But once the Alliance tournament's done and finished, we'll be sitting down and we'll be looking at an in-depth rule set. We'll be looking at exactly how we want to handle it, and then we'll just go from there. So you guys will hear more in a few weeks.
Very cool. Are we going to be seeing an official response as to Max Singularity's lack of eligibility as an heir?
We will see no official response about that. I think we've made ourselves clear. Only the heirs that are eligible, the heirs of the houses, they're the only people you'll be able to fight for. We're not accepting Taylor Swift.
And I don't know if anybody's watching the Twitch channel, but Max Singularity has just declared his loyalty to House Kador, so.
Yes,
there
Max,
you go.
As much as people are trying to claim they want to fight for Max, he actually takes the lore very seriously, and he understands that he needs to fight for a house.
I actually really like what Max is doing. He's been doing a fantastic job in his own way. So, any rate, I think that probably about wraps up. Oh, sorry. I have Uriel, and then Ascentior has something to throw out there about this, and then we'll move.
No, you guys literally just mentioned it. He said he would fight for Kador in the thread I made about Corazor on the IGS. So you already covered that, though.
Very cool.
I just want to say I love Max. He's a great guy.
And Ascentior?
Yeah, it's just same thing on Max. He's done a great lot of work for roleplay in a very short amount of time. I mean, obviously he's had spotlight help, but I think it's a really nice snowball effect from having won the cosplay award at FanFest to come to where he is now, and he's really taken a lot of bounds to improving his roleplay and just bringing it to the masses. It's great.
Yep, I give him hell sometimes, but really, the more I look into like what he's doing, the more he's been doing a fantastic job. So thank you very much. All right, so. All right, so we are at just about 53 minutes in, so we're about halfway done with this lore panel. So we've touched on some of the bigger stuff. We definitely have more stuff to cover, so let's move on to what's happening, I believe, next week, right? Drifters Incursions are officially in the patch notes, so they are coming on Tuesday. And what's scary about it is that we still don't know that much about how to do them well.
I was going to say, that's like the coyest piece of patch notes we've ever seen.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, you're all gonna die.
Just a minor note.
So some of you guys have been fiddling around with these drifter incursions, and more importantly, with the drifters in general. Mac, you got something to throw out there as we start this section?
So first, a general thing that we've noticed while running around with him on the test server. Holy Jesus, are there a lot of drifters, and they are very difficult to fight with anything resembling normal tactics. So I have two questions for CCP tied with this. The first, are these going to go live on Tuesday? That's to say, like, are they going to hit TQ and immediately start happening, or are they going to come later or presaged by some event? And secondly, so are they getting a balance pass by chance?
I'll answer the second question first. As to the balance pass, no, I think you just need to be better at EVE. As for the first...
Shots fired.
Well,
the first question about whether they're going live on Tuesday, I think you should just wait and see. As with all our stuff, usually the drifters do things that are reactionary. So I think you should just wait and see what happens. Obviously, the Empire aren't very happy with them at the moment, so perhaps they'll be involved in the reason why the drifters appear.
Hold on.
So that sounds like there's going to be some sort of attack that presages the continued Drifter MR war.
I don't know, but I think I'm going to have to recover from that wicked burning.
Yeah, seriously. I might need some aloe.
I would also like to point out that we weren't fiddling around with these on the test server. We were dying in hilarious fires to these things.
You weren't fiddling around with the drifters. The drifters were fiddling around with you.
Yeah, they still have their doomsdays in those sites last I checked.
Also, from what I've heard from the test server, I haven't actually gotten a chance to play with it myself, but the Amar Navy are there to support you, but they seem to be not as effective as we would like.
They are, in fact, also dying in a fire.
Excellent. I have actually heard some reports from people secretly telling me that they have figured out mechanisms to defeat the drifters, but we'll just have to see whether or not that actually ends up being real. So in the meantime, we have these new incursions, which are coming apparently soon-ish. And so last time we were speculating about these incursions, I suggested that it was possible that the drifter incursions were happening at a different section of space than the Amar side of the incursions. There's Amar sites and there's drifter sites. Has that been confirmed, or how do the sites kind of, how are they distributed and how do they function?
Okay, so on Sissi at the moment, it's actually listed as Defense of the Throne Worlds. When you open up your journal that you normally see the regular incursions at, instead of it showing the relevant faction icon for the area that's being attacked, it now instead shows either the Drifter symbol or the Sancha symbol. But it's not restricted, it's not restricted to the direct area around the Throne Worlds, as I found out today. They started attacking some low-sec systems that were around 20 or so jumps away from the Throne Worlds.
Interesting. Was it still in high sec?
So one thing I've noticed is that for each time that the incursion started up on Sissi, that there was 3 major staging points. The actual listing in the journal this time actually had the staging point as in low-sec. But one of the systems that was effective was one high-sec system. It was one high-sec and 2 low-sec systems.
Interesting. So there's still a lot to understand. Now, for those of you who were not here when the Sancha incursions occurred, all I'm going to say to the people who are playing the game and not just doing the lore, do not bring your really blingy battleship. Well, never mind. Go ahead and bring your really blingy battleship. I want to see your lost man. No, there's going to be a hilarious amount of death once these incursions are actually released, I suspect. All right, so next would be Anslo. You've got something to throw in there, and then back to General Stargazer.
Oh yeah, so for the bling battleships, just keep in mind, if anyone wants to try and be Debonair and go in and think that you can elite solo PvE one of these drifters, the damage that they're doing is like, what, 750,000 base damage. Me and some dudes in like, I think it was Akame, I think it was mostly Sober, Nathaniel, he helped me do that too, and I think a dude from Adversity helped me. We came up with a subcap to be able to handle the Drifter Doomsday and be able to survive and actually still fight. Keep in mind, this fit requires very specific links, very specific implants, drugs, a very specific fit. It has to be a Marauder or a very blinged out T3. Total comes about to 7 or 8 billion ISK for one ship to be able to handle that. So no one's going to be able to really feasibly solo these things too easily. So whenever you go at them, you know, keep that in mind. The only ships that we were able to find that were able to take out drifters without losses and very effectively were tank fit slow cats, and we tossed in a few supers just for, you know, fun times.
Was this during a drifter incursion? Because the drifter incursions also have effects that nerf your ship.
No, this was just a normal drifter. It takes that much to be able to take on one drifter without the effects. So with the effects, I can't even imagine. So just keep it in mind. We almost lost a slow cat to a drifter at one point because this guy didn't fit full tank. So be very careful with what you do.
All right, and from there, I'm going to actually pull back a little bit and jump over to Mac, who's been waiting patiently to throw in something, and then over to Morwen.
Okay, so a couple of things. First thing to note, random mechanic that has not been mentioned yet, I think. The drifter incursions on CC spread. So if you don't defeat them, they spread to neighboring systems at about the rate of about like a system a day. So over the course of things, the drifters continue to attack progressively more systems. Secondly, with regard to the bling ship's method of fighting drifters, Siniel, who is the premier drifter hunter and is phenomenally capable, his primary method has been using a ridiculously blinged out rattlesnake. With a rattlesnake or a Navy issue Scorp or a Tengu, with overheat and ridiculous bling, you can in fact survive a doomsday. And there are rumors that he's sort of aimed to possibly fight the lower level drifter incursion sites with remote rep rattlesnakes using ridiculous amounts of bling. Obviously, this is outside the reach of mere mortals, and this is something that requires a lot of coordination, and it will probably end up with people still losing billions and billions of ISK worth of ships, which is far outside the payout of these sites.
Now, Makoto, you just dropped a pretty big bomb there in that the incursions expand. The question that popped immediately into my mind is, do they contract?
That's a very good question, and we have not gotten to that point on CC.
We would have to win first to know what happens.
Yeah, exactly. As it stands, winning is sort of not exactly an option.
All right,
yes,
so
they do contract. There is a way to fight them back, but only if you can defeat the drifters. So I don't know. They're just going to spread forever.
I, for one...
Welcome our new drifter overlords.
Yeah, exactly.
I was waiting for that.
I'm glad I'm docked in a place that's governed by legacy code.
Wow. Thank you for the bomb affinity.
All right, now I've completely lost track of where we are. So I'm going to ask Mac if you've got something to say.
I think Affinity sort of stole the show there, and I think it's on to Morlag.
Yep. Well, let's bounce over to Morwen.
Right. So I mean, we're talking about defeating the drifters in these sites. Now we do know that unless you are, Siniel and do the super bling bling bling, you're basically guaranteed to lose at least one ship per drifter that you try to kill, because, well, they fire off a Doomsday that does 750,000 hit points of damage before resists, and it's Omni damage. So, for what it's worth, the sites have anywhere from between 5 to 13 drifters in each of them. Yeah. Suffice to say, you're not going to be doing these without taking losses unless there's a way to complete these sites without, say, having to actually kill them. We don't know if that's a thing. We have, and like Makoto said, we haven't discovered how to make things contract because we haven't been able to complete the sites. A lot of us have been busy with time zones. We haven't been able to get a fleet together to go and do it. So.
All right. Yes. So, okay. Next is on to, shoot, who was the next? I think General Stargazer. Didn't you have something to say?
Yeah, just a couple of things following what other people have said. Even though Anslo was saying about using super capitals and capitals, it should be worth noting that actually in those low-sec systems, when you warp to the beacons, you can't actually enter any of these sites with capitals. So you're only able to use them on stations or gates, which, as far as I've been able to experience on Sissy, doesn't actually contribute towards removing them from system. The other thing is, like with the Sentry incursions, there are effects that happen in the system when there's an incursion in process. One of them being is that your resistances for shields and resistances for armor is also reduced. So even having a very blingy ship that may work in an unidentified wormhole, for example, may not work in an incursion system.
So, do we just totally tinfoil for a second? Like, Sancha keeps mysteriously showing up in a lot of really weird ways when it comes to this lore as it unfolds, and now drifters are using, like, the system effects for Sancha was supposed to be because they had like really advanced tech that they're using to broadcast to cause these effects in the system. Why can drifters use the same effects? Is a question that I have.
It's not identical effects. I just want to point that out as well. It's okay, yes, armor and shield resistance reduction is part of it. Also, damage reduction is another part of it. It also has the new effect of reducing your speed in the system as well. As far as I'm aware, for example, the Sino blocking effects that you get in the Sentry incursions don't actually happen in the Drifter incursions.
All right, so we are going to bounce over to Anslo and then Ascentior.
So I actually didn't know about the speed part, but that's pretty interesting. The way Rhavas, who's here with us, he came up with a really brilliant theory for what happened at Carolyn Star and why things were happening with the Jove observatories, etc., etc. So you guys really should check out his blog, which he'll link somewhere in Twitch at some point. So the long and short version of his blog and his explanation was that, if I recall correctly, whenever Carolyn Star blew up, there was kind of I don't know how to say it. It basically broke physics, because the way that we were observing the anomaly happen, we shouldn't have been able to. So with that being said, whenever you're able to blow up a star, which in reality or in Eve, wherever, it's not easy. You don't just do it. One does not just blow up a star. You're gonna have some really weird local effects. So moving over to what the drifters are capable of, and what we would, some people would tinfoil hat and say, okay, maybe the drifters were the ones who did Carolyn Star. That kind of technology would, in my mind, create the kind of effects that we're talking about. We're talking about something that's bending space and time. We're talking about, random exotic particle matter going to and fro. We're talking about all kinds of weird and different things that are popping up from this kind of technology. And what else? Something else. Actually, no, never mind. I said everything.
All right.
Well, sort of tied into that, it's the if you believe, as some do, that the drifters are tied back to the Talican, that's sort of the heart of what the Talican are all about, is the ability to move things quickly, strangely, and in non-linear sort of ways.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's less surprising that the drifters are able to do the system-wide effects than it is that the Sancha can do them.
Right.
Well, I guess my point is that
Sancha probably salvaged the technology.
Right. Like I guess that's my point, which is that not necessarily that the drifters are stealing Sancha technology, but perhaps Sancha stole drifter technology way back in the day.
Oh, I'm sorry. And on another note, to make kind of a correlation, their technology is the solar systems as like New Eden Empire's Titans were to planets. Like just parking a Titan next to a planet. This is some older lore. People can look this up. But back in the day, the big Titans, the real ones, whenever you parked it just next to a planet, even farther out away from it, it would change tides, it would change weather, it could possibly even destroy a planet. One solar system went hungry because an entire farm planet was decimated by a Titan just sitting there. It didn't shoot anything, it didn't activate a shield, it didn't create anything at all that was out of the norm. It was just existing in that space. So take that kind of concept and apply it to drifters to an entire solar system.
Operation Gravity Well. All right, moving on to Ascentior. You got something to say?
Yeah, so 2 points. The talked about fighting the drifters in LING ships, but I just want to touch on something that CCP Affinity said earlier, that the AI for drifters has changed and they can choose to fire their Doomsday before their shield drops. And we obviously saw what that does to a Titan. So I'm not sure what what's going to make them want to fire their Doomsday earlier, but I'd imagine if you turn up in a 7 billion ISK ship, that's probably going to likely make them think, well, let's just fire the Doomsday and get this guy out of the way.
Yeah, CCP Affinity's comment earlier about them being able to fire their Doomsday, quote unquote, if they decide they want to, makes me a bit nervous. I've also heard that people were trying to use interceptors to kite the drifters, which is possibly one of the reasons why there's that speed penalty. Okay, so is there any... Please X up real quick if you still have anything to say about Uriel. Go for it.
So I just wanted to mention, this is completely detached from the lore behind any of this, but in the entries, there are different effect beacons for each, level of effect and stuff. Beyond just the ones with the negative effects for the drifters, there are also ones that have a positive effect. There's Drifter, Incursion, Defeat, 3, 1 to 3, 3 to 5, or like 5 to 8 and something like that. But it also goes in the other direction with beacons labeled Victory, where it gives positive bonuses. And I'm just wondering if we're going to see any of that, or if they're more of an idea that they touched on but didn't actually end up using. And they give some significant bonuses if you're high in Victory.
So what we know is that the Drifter Incursions are coming, and they're very hard, and they're going to spread. So this represents basically almost like a new war front within our universe. So
in a Mars space.
In a Mars space.
At first.
It might not
Actually, if I can just mention one more point about that. May I?
Sure, go for it.
All right. So I know we've heard say of CCP wanting to do more stuff for group PV and nullsec. Now the drifters are obviously just in Amar at first, but we also know drifters with their Entosis-like stuff. I feel, it's just a personal hope of mine that they might end up implementing drifter incursions in Null, where they would actually try to take your sovereignty, which would mean an active thing you'd have to defend against if they attacked. And obviously they don't blue anyone, so...
I'm going to take CCP's silence as ominous.
I don't know. Maybe we'll send him to Providence. I don't know.
Why not? Everybody wants to take Providence nowadays. General Stargazer, what do you got?
No, just following up on what Uriel was just saying, it's probably also worth pointing out that the combination of the unidentified wormholes in a system with the Jove observatories, you've only ever seen the two in sort of relation to each other. So there's more systems out there with the Jove observatories that obviously we're not seeing drifter incursions in at the moment. So what Uriel's saying is definitely a good possibility.
Very interesting. And then we'll finish up with the Anslo, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Just to be noted, I don't remember who in the Lore channel on Slack or whoever it was did the check, but whenever they were on Singularity, they checked the Drifter Incursion page. There was an incursion in LowSec, so for you LowSec nerds, just like with the Sancha incursions, they're going to be there, but they're going to expand. So unless we fight them, we're going to have issues. I'm looking at you, Shadow Cartel, and Snuff, and DT, etc., etc.
CCP Affinity, why don't you ask your question? I think that anything that you have to contribute would be valuable.
I know that there's been a lot of talk, like just separate to the question, and there's been a lot of talk on like where the AI came from, and is like the Incursions the end game for the Drifters? Like, is this where we were taking this AI all along? And I just want to say no, it's not. The Incursions are sort of just the beginning for the Drifters. We have many, many places we want to take them. Some a lot more dangerous, a lot more challenging than what is out there right now. I think the Drifters are just in their early stages. As for the AI, we're really pleased with what we've done so far with it, but we're still improving on it day by day, release by release. And a lot of the things that you've seen, like the Drifters being in space, the Incursion stuff, they're tech tests that we're doing with our AI. We want to see, we want to push the boundaries of our AI, see where we can take it, see what we can deliver to you next. The next thing we want to do is convoys, so NPCs that jump from system to system. Maybe the Drifters won't just follow you in station camp, they'll follow you from system to system. There will be no escape.
I'm also going to kind of put you on spot real quick, because when you were on our podcast last time, you said that the goal for your team was to implement new AI for basically everything in New Eden. This is clearly part of that, but I mean, is things on track?
It's taken longer than we thought it would, but things are definitely on track. I mean, the next, I would really like to see the factional warfare NPCs with new AI next, but who knows where our plans will take us. Things are still a little bit up in the air, but we're definitely on track to continue our AI work.
Very cool. Yeah, and some people have noted that a lot of the behavior of the Seekers and the Drifters could easily be translated to known NPCs. For example, they hunt for Entosis links in a very customs kind of way, etc. All right, so Mac, do you have anything to throw out there?
So I was just going to have an Ofrig moment with the more difficult than what we've been seeing. So to give a very brief background, the first Drifter hive raid on TQ took something like 13 hours. And even with what follows, it took, 2 to 3 hours on average, simply because we didn't have the masses of bodies to throw at it that might otherwise make it faster. So making Drifters take more of a challenge to fight, oh dear God. Oh dear God.
Well, it's also possible we could get new tools.
Quite true. All the same, oh dear God.
All right, so I think that about wraps it up for the Drifter Incursions. I'm going to give one last little 5-second window of opportunity, and then we're going to move on. Okay, so that nobody else is Xing, so here we go. All right. Now we're kind of what we have left for the last 40 minutes of the podcast or the show is more smaller details. We've gone over a lot of the bigger details. We have some questions. I think that some of the questions are for CCP and some of them are for our lore panel. Feel free at any time, CCP, to let us know that you're not going to answer a question, and we'll just start going through these. So question number one, which I'm almost positive is going to be a non-answer, but with Jamyl gone, why did the Drifters continue to single out the Amarians? And again, this doesn't have to be answered by CCP. This could be something that people could speculate on besides CCP. Anyone?
Well, depending on whether we're getting another event between now and when the Drifter Incursions really start spreading, patch notes, something being in the patch note doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see it right away. So it's entirely possible that there's something that's going to happen to trigger them doing things. This was kind of tinfoiled earlier. So maybe they think they're done, and they're going, op success, everybody go home, job's done. But if the Amarg do something to piss them off even more, who knows?
One of the really big clear things about the Drifters is that they really do not like the fact that we have the Entosis links. And the Entosis link was invented by, or was basically produced by the Amar. So they've got plenty of reasons to be not liking the Amar. So, Ascentior, do you have anything to throw in there?
Well, obviously the true Amar character in me says because they are, they hate God and they want to kill the chosen of God because we bring light to the cluster, and they obviously just want to drench us in darkness. But as everyone throwing up in the chat as well, and we've talked quite a bit about behind the scenes Empire as well. I think our original incursion into stealing sleeper implants to create the first Templars may be part of it. They pointed out that these guys do resemble the sleepers a little bit, or some of their tech. They use some of their tech, so we think that might be a part of it as well.
CCP Falcon.
Yeah, I think there's a few aspects to it. I mean, when you look at the Amar, I mean, as Morwen pointed out, Imperial armaments kind of are ripped off their tech sort of thing, and started sort of reverse engineering and messing with it. I'm sure that's got the Drifters a little bit edgy. As well as that, kind of the Amar also poses the biggest threat, I suppose, in terms of just how big their military is, and especially with Imperial armaments taking shots at reverse engineering their technology, and the Imperial Navy and the Imperial military's presence historically in wormholes. They've sort of they've regarded these guys as the biggest threat, and as well as that, sort of if you'd been branded an abomination, I'm sure you'd be a little bit pissed off, wouldn't you?
Right. All right. So, Mac, you've got something to throw in there, and then Anslo, and then Phi.
So a quick thing to note is that the first generation Dust Soldiers had a mix of residual sleeper consciousnesses or others inhabiting their implants. So it's entirely possible that others escaped the construct by way of the sleeper implants that were harvested for Dust Soldiers. And we also had Jamyl SARUM try to bring the first generation Dust Soldiers home, and then I seem to recall that she then purged some of them. So it's entirely possible that this was the other harvesting others, as it is, to build the others' army to fight the sleepers. So, I mean, that's awfully tinfoily, but that might be a thing to keep an eye on.
Anslo?
So, actually, Mac pointed on something that I wanted to talk about. So we're talking about why the Drifters are going after Amar so hard. With what Mac was saying and about the others trying to build up an army or something like that, Uriel had posted, or at least reminded some of us about parts of the one of the books that basically described how the others were perceived in the construct and things like that. And the big thing to note was that there were multiple ones of them. Like it wasn't just one. Like there's kind of like one head honcho. He was the first one, and then there ended up being more and more and more. So for me, it's like, okay, we know the other prime, or one of the others, something like that, was in Jamyl's head. Maybe they thought that by killing Jamyl or something like that, that they would be able to free it. Something goes wrong, and then they go after Amar even harder. I mean, that could be one possibility. The other possibility was what Falcon was talking about. Amar basically just stole their technology, like right from under them, and applied it in ways that the others or the Drifters or whoever they didn't want that. So that could be another possibility. My personal idea, and I think Ascentior pointed or talked about this, is that like Amar loyalists and NPC characters have been saying, Amar's rallying, everybody's heading to Athra. I personally think that we're gonna see, maybe we're gonna see an event or some kind of attack where Amar goes full force, no holds barred, not pulling any punches, into one of the Drifter wormholes, or maybe they find a Drifter wormhole that we didn't know about. Because remember, the Righteous Cross had done a thing over in the New Eden system. Righteous Cross was Amar ship, battleship. I don't even remember what it was. Anyway, they were over there. They were doing some kind of shakedown exploration for about 2 weeks or so. for all we know, Amar might have found a way to strike at the very heart of what the drifters are, like right at where they're living. Because at one of the trailers, the emergent threats trailer, we see the drifters waking up. We see their ships coming off the line, but the ships coming off the line are in an area that doesn't look very similar to what the hives are. So there may yet still be a big construct we haven't found, and maybe Amar find it first. Maybe Amar go in there and they absolutely decimate this manufactory, or maybe it's a citadel. Maybe it's the first thing of a citadel, because we've seen some scrapings from Darkblood that showed some very large wreckage. So that might be the remnants of the Amar attack, and then the drifters decide, you know what, we were just going to take out Jamyl and the other, but after this, nope, everybody dies. That's my personal thoughts on it.
I suspect that this is something that we're going to be talking about a lot more in the future. I personally don't buy into the idea that the other was trapped in Jamyl as much as projected into Jamyl, but I know that there's a lot of people that feel that way. We're going to bounce over to Uriel real quick and then wrap up the segment so that we can finish up the rest of the stuff, because we've still got more things to touch on. So, Uriel, go for it.
All right, so the only thing I wanted to mention about how Makoto was talking about if the sleepers or whatever the, architects or the Anteovnuecci or whatever come after the other side of that, if the drifters are indeed the others, which is one of the big tinfoil things that discussion's been going on, if the drifters are the others, then they would have come back for their person in charge first, if the other in Jamyl is that other and there are the others, or in with that, after that, if they were still coming, that means they're all leaving the construct and coming back to New Eden for another reason. Maybe to reconquer things and try to take space back, if they really are some of the things we've thought of. So that's the other side of it. But it could be either, and I guess we have yet to see.
We will have to see. Phi, why don't you close up this section?
So I think the timing is tremendously convenient, because I don't think you need 100 drifter super weapons to destroy a Titan, and Jamyl has been out in her Titan a lot. The timing is such that the drifters came in just before Jamyl was able to board the Auctoritas for the first time. So maybe it's something where if she had gotten into that, she would have had some sort of advantage over them.
So actually, it was pointed out that given the fact that she was in a Titan, she was the first person in the history of EVE Online to have actually found a use for the Spectrum Target Breaker. But unfortunately, a Titan cannot fit one, but a battleship can. Just saying. All right.
So you're basically what you're tinfoiling is that module will actually have a use after however many years it's been in the game?
Wow. No, I just saw that on a Reddit post. It was pretty good. All right, so that actually brings us to the next thing, which is the CC or the Auctoritas and the Righteous Cross. Both of those are kind of important pieces, both of which we have not yet seen, but are kind of players in the game. So, Mac, why don't you touch on the Righteous Cross mission, and then we'll head on to the Auctoritas.
So this is a little bit of tinfoil that doesn't necessarily have too much basis, aside from the fact that the TES Righteous Cross had its shakedown cruise for 2 weeks in the Eve constellation, which is where rumor and lore holds there are a lot of Terran artifacts cloaked and hidden by the Jove. So originally, the original Terran superweapon used by Jamyl SARUM was recovered by Amar agents from that space, and then the TES Righteous Cross spends 2 weeks in that space on its shakedown cruise, and then returns to SAFIZON. So it's entirely possible that, oh hey, there was some piece of Terran tech recovered, but we have no real verification on this, but it does dovetail with some stuff very nicely.
It is noteworthy that one of the major features of the Auctoritas is 30% more capacitor. They've got to be charging it for something. But thankfully, actually, I have word that CCP Falcon himself wants to say some things about the Auctoritas, so go for
it. Man, that's some serious tinfoil. So yeah, I mean the Righteous Cross is an Abaddon Imperial issue, and so is the Auctoritas, and these these were built. The Righteous Course was built as a prototype, the first one, and then the Autoritas was built as the new flagship for SARUM, basically the ceremonial flagship rather, of the Throne World's Defense Fleet, my first fleet. But yeah, I mean, other than what they are being Abaddon Imperial issues, I mean, exactly where they had their shakedowns and where they went and where they came back to, it's entirely up in the air. It could have relevance, it could not. It's it's good that you guys are putting theories together, I suppose, but I mean, right now, I don't think there's anything that can really get confirmed.
Aw. All right. Do you have anything else to say about this, the Autoritas specifically?
It's shiny and gold-plated.
I'm suspecting that we will eventually get to see it then.
I'm sure that the class of ship you'll definitely get to see, absolutely.
I think I speak for the whole panel when I say that your lack of confirmation is the best confirmation we can have.
Amen.
I think it's one of those things where, the Autoritas wasn't destroyed, and it's still intended to be the flagship, the ceremonial flagship of the Human Navy, so maybe you'll see it at some point. We're going to have a new Emperor, Empress eventually, and they're going to need a nice ride that's all gold-plated to fly around in, so yeah, maybe it'll be out there.
I'm going to bounce this over to Ascentior, because I think that you probably know this best. What was the reward for those who contributed to the previous succession trials?
Would that be an Imperial issue ship?
So it was an Imperial issue ship?
Yeah, it was the, I can't remember which one it is though now. Put me on the spot. I think it was the Apocalypse Navy issue, wasn't it?
Apocalypse, Imperial Apocalypse.
And that's also where the gold magnates came from, right?
And the silver.
Okay, there you go. So it's possible that that could happen, but who knows? Apparently, CCP Falcon refuses to confirm or deny anything, which is exactly what we would want from him, I guess. All right, so I think that about does it for the Autoritas. Unfortunately, at this point, we don't know anything more besides the fact that it still exists. We have physically seen it. It looks like a gold Abaddon, and we have stats for it, sort of. So moving on, before we wrap this up, during our first lore panel, we kind of talked about the key players of the lore of the current arc. And so we talked about Sancha and Jamyl and all these different people. And one of the groups that we didn't really touch on very much was the Society of Conscious Thought. And they have injected themselves, as it were, very critically into the lore within the last few weeks. So Uriel, why don't you introduce us to the Society of Conscious Thought? I know that they're linked to the Jove, but the Jove are gone now. So who are the Society of Conscious Thought? Where did they come from? And more importantly, what is their shtick now?
Well, the Society originally was a splinter group from the Jove Directorate, the Third Jove Empire. They were originally more of a, let's say, spiritual side to them, but they ended up doing a lot of shady things behind the scenes, even with the Jove, and ended up getting ousted for that. So after that, they became a little less shady towards the Jove, at least, and ended up becoming something more of their own. They've had a lot of shady dealings over the years. If you've ever read a lot of the older chronicles, they have a very interesting link, and they have first their seeming rivalry with the Sisters of Eve, but then they also have links to the Sancha. If you've read some of the older chronicles, where they might have actually been some of the people to help make the slave stuff. And beyond that, they're what?
And the Blood Raiders.
And I was going to mention that, yeah. In the End of the World's Chronicles, which are also relevant in that that's where Jamyl's original superweapon in the Abaddon gets blown up, and we have the Salen incident. They gave something to the Blood Raiders that allowed them to make the rogue drones stand down, and they also wanted them to bring the superweapon to the Roa system, adjacent to their home system. Which, well, the Society is a very interesting group. We don't know enough about them, but I'd love to know more. And as for what they do now, we don't really know. the last thing we've seen of them. We know they hosted the Symposium for Emergent Threats. Machiarish was there, and then we saw him again when he came out of nowhere and performed, well, what looked like the Drifter version of Ventosis on Jamyl's SARUM. And after he had finished what he was doing is when they blew him up. He said they had learned what they needed to learn. Very, very ominous.
So, the Gnosis class ship is a ship that was given to us by the Society of Conscious Thought, and that guy, I can't remember his name. You just said it. The Society of Conscious Thought guy that scanned Jamyl's avatar was in a Gnosis. Do we know anything about that tech in particular, the Gnosis? Like, I know that in the past, when we have been given ships by mysterious organizations, they have not always had our best interest in mind. Do you think that that's possible with the Gnosis, or is that too old of a thing to be kind of playing into this whole thing?
Well, the Gnosis is a lot newer of a one. I would say, if anything, it might if anything is bugged, it's the Gnosis. Because they literally distributed one to every Capsuleer. It's not even like the Sisters of Eve where we had to get them. They literally just gave them to us. And we know the Jove's penchant for intelligence. If you've ever read Theodicy or seen, the observatories, I would not be surprised if they have some sort of thing where they're looking at what we're doing through those ships.
After they didn't get the data that they needed from the Apotheosis gifts because it wasn't all that useful, they gave us the Gnosis, which allows you to fly with any kind of skills in order to make sure that they got that data.
And I've just got to say, I love that ship. It is so fun to fly. I just want a Society battleship or carrier. Anyhow, back to the subject.
Yep. All right, so I'm going to bounce it over to Mac. You've got a couple of comments.
Quick heads up, actually, the Sisters did give every Capsuleer a ship sort of surreptitiously by other channels. The Intaki Syndicate gave out the Zephyr, and the Zephyr and the Sisters did in fact bug that, and then proceed to give the data to the Ishikona Corporation for something, we know not what.
Right. All right, so I'm going to take this. I have a rumor, apparently, that CCP Falcon has something to say about the Society of Conscious Thought. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Falcon. Or was it Falcon?
Delegate Zero.
Oh, yeah, Delegate Zero, my bad.
Yeah, on the Society of Conscious Thought, yeah, they, the thing to remember about the Society is that they're organized in a very distributed way into these individual schools called Kitses. So that plays into their character somewhat. And that's the thing they inherited a little bit from the Jove, because the Jove are actually highly factionalized under the hood. There may be some more events, some doings, happenings when it comes to the Society. And actually, we were looking to put them, they will feature in a future chronicle. So there'll be some more coming out with them.
Oh, so we're going to get more information in a future chronicle specifically about the Society of Conscious Thought. Do you have a timeline on that, or is...
in the near future.
All right. That sounds cool. Okay, so we got some more information coming out about the Society of Conscious Thought, thanks to Delegate Zero. All right, so do we know anything about, like, I know that they're fairly mysterious, but do we know anything about who their allies are?
Well, just going off of standings, they're in good standings with the Directorate, but we don't quite know what the state of the Directorate is right now. We'll see, though.
They probably are the closest analog that we have to the Directorate right now. If anyone knows what happened to the Directorate, it would be them.
Right. I guess one of my biggest questions is, what are the chances that they have agreements with, for instance, the Sisters of Eve or something like that?
Well, we do know that they both attended the Sisters of Eve unveiling of what they found with the shattered wormholes back whenever it was, February or something like that. So we do know that they've been in discussions within the last year. We also know that they have a long history of being combatants with them as well, though.
All right, Anslo, go ahead and take the stage.
The other interesting thing about the SOCT is that they were the only one. Well, I don't know who else could have been present with the Empires, but they were the only faction that was present that didn't act at all the Jamyl events, like in support or something like that. Like you had one dude that lobbed a torpedo. I think that was Quatros. He lobbed a torpedo at Jamyl's Titan and got concorded pretty quick or something. But the SOCT were the only kind of neutral whatever party that was doing nothing but scanning down Jamyl, really pretty passive, and then he got blapped for it. But I want to know, is it possible if CCP can give us more details about what they found scanning? Are we ever going to hear in a chronicle about the why or the how, or where did that data go, or why was it Machi or whatever his name was, and why didn't they just use someone else? Why did it have to be him? Who told them to Intosis Jamyl? Like, are we ever going to know that, or is it just going to kind of be lingering there?
I'm going to hand it over to CCP for their non-answer.
It's not quite a non-answer. I would say wait and see. You'll find out a little bit more about the fate of Manchiresh, but I'm not going to say any more about that.
You would.
All right, I'm going to bounce over to Mac.
So, quick thing to note about SOCT allies is that they're sort of isolated. They are usually put into opposition with the Sisters of Eve. They are sort of a faction in not quite disgrace with the Directorate, which is now effectively defunct so far as we're concerned. And they don't really ally themselves closely with any of the powers that be in New Eden. But the flip side is that they are also a very highly respected educational institution that operates essentially in isolation. So they're essentially impervious to threat so far as we know, but they also don't overtly exert any sort of force or political clout in New Eden, so far as we know.
Right. Okay. So that is the Society of Conscious Thought, possibly one of the most mysterious of all of the non-drifter entities in this unfolding story, which is actually saying something because they've got some competition for the most mysterious. So I'm actually going to now, Rhavas has something about SOCP.
Yeah, the only other thing that I'd say, just to build on what Makoto was saying, is that don't underestimate the behind the scenes influence. I mean, think of them like any major, high profile educational institution, in real life. Think of Harvard, think of Oxford, and think of the subtle connections in a lot of other places that they could potentially reach out through, even if they're not overtly allied. A lot of leaders from various groups or various places were Society of Conscious Thought educated.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much for that. All right. So moving on, Rhavas, you also have some tinfoil that you want to propose to the panel. So I'm just going to hand it over to you and let you say your piece.
Sure. So there's been a few things that have popped up that I think have just in the last couple of days have kind of ignited a couple of other questions that are certainly very tinfoil at this point, with some of the mining of the database that's kind of come up with the pod kill mail that Jamyl has that shows that she's got a full set of high grade slaves in when she was potted, and that it brings up some other questions around, would Jamyl actually have had those in? Was that an intentional effect, or was that just we need a little more armor on the Titan? There's obviously a lot of discussion about whether or not that was a mechanics approach or a role play approach, and certainly if CCP wants to weigh in on that would be great. But I'll expect silence on that one. But that certainly brings up a question of all the other Sancha things around the wormholes, around the incursions, around some of the other things that have kind of happened in the last year relative to the shattered wormholes, and that brings up sort of the other question. Well, Jamyl's dead, and Affinity just confirmed that she's dead. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the other that was living in her head is. And so then that obviously raises the question of, if the other is still around, where is the other? Obviously, Matt Shireish from the Society of Conscious Thought is sort of an obvious candidate, because of being scanned by the apparent entosis beam. Was there some sort of a consciousness transfer or a remap or some sort of thing that happened there? But Matt Shireish also isn't the only choice for that. It could be, as I mentioned, there could be some things relative to Sanshia Kubake. We know from the books that the other was transported in via implants into Jamyl, and then used those same implants in other Amar loyalists. So it's entirely possible that the other could have jumped from Jamyl to another candidate, or into someone who's got Sanshia implants, or the other could have ended up back in the construct. Obviously, it came out of the construct. There's nothing to say it doesn't have a quote unquote AI clone of itself back within the construct. And obviously, with all of the corpse collecting and the fact that we don't know where Jamyl's corpse is, it raises the question of, is the other now in one of the drifters, or captured somehow in the implant that's been picked up? And did the drifters pick it up, or did a player pick it up?
Right. And I'm actually going to rephrase a little bit of your question about her pod. So we have the kill mail, both the ship and the pod. However, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that information is official, like in-game information at all. So it's entirely possible that the implants were never meant to be something that is like supposed to take an in-game consideration. So I'm going to
sure, in character that's not known, obviously. Right. From an in-character perspective, the body hasn't been recovered as far as we know, so that's not public knowledge. That's an out of character bit of information.
So with that being said, I'm just going to bounce it to CCP for a quick yes, no, or I'm not going to tell you. Is the slave implants in the pod something that should even be considered, or is that simply a mechanical requirement?
So it's not something like you guys said that would be in character information, but she's a head of state. They'd want it to be as well protected as possible. So of course she's going to have implants in her head when she's piloting. I mean, that's a given. It's there, shock horror, she's a capsuleer and she fits for combat. That's what she's there to do. Like, the flagship is there to protect her, so she's got the best shot possible. So yeah, I mean, with the response to that, yeah, she was wearing implants. That's just how it is. But obviously, I don't think people would really know in character, because I don't think the Imperial Navy would sort of give out details of what she was fitted with, etc., that kind of thing. But in terms of is she dead? Is the other dead? Well, she's scattered all over SAFIZON, so yeah, I mean, she's as dead as a can of spam, pretty much.
That's an awesome expression. So I'm actually going to ambush you, not really ambush you, but I'm going to, something that's been brought up a lot in the last couple of days is that Jamyl SARUM the First can still be found via locator agents. Is there anything to read into that, or is that just a mechanical oops?
No, it's just a mechanical thing. I mean, the character still exists on Tranquility, so it's it can be found if you run the name through a locator agent. It's just a mechanical thing, basically. She's, as I said previously, as dead can be.
Biomaster, do it. I'm just kidding. All right, so I think that settles those things. I think Max still had something that you wanted to say, though. And then we really do have to move on. Matt?
I think we're clear on that point.
Okay. So do we have any more tinfoil, or can we head on to just... Oh, sorry, Uriel, you have something to say.
Yeah, the only things I had meant to mention is a very short little thing about... hold on. Yeah, I actually can't remember now. I'm sorry.
That's fine. All right, so I'm going to actually move on. We've collected a series of questions for Affinity and Falcon that we're going to kind of go over. Again, we're running low on time, so we're going to have to, ping these off. And And actually, sorry, my bad. We have questions for Affinity, Falcon, and Delegate Zero, I suppose. When I wrote the docs, I didn't realize the Delegate Zero is going to be dropping in. So feel free to answer or not answer any of these, obviously. So first of all, a request for clarification. And again, these are the rules for the trial, so whatever. But the previous trials were frigate only. Do you know if the new trial will have such restrictions, or will they be different?
So the original March Championships, yeah, it was frigate only, and I think that was because that was pretty much all anyone could afford back then. There wasn't a lot of people who were in like anything bigger than a cruiser back at that point in the game. In terms of the new stuff, we're exploring options. We don't know what the rule set is going to be, but it's probably going to be pretty varied to allow for some really fun combat. So I wouldn't say it's going to be frigate only, but yeah, we're still exploring. You guys, like I said earlier, will hear about it in a few more weeks once we've sort of sat down and nailed a rule set down that's going to give good entertainment and good fighting.
There's already a pretty big restriction on it in that only Amar ships are allowed, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to give a super interesting meta anyway. I mean, it's going to be really, really weird to see only Amar ships on the field. And it's going to kind of, we've got to consider like what kind of restrictions we want to put on in terms of points value of different classes, different hulls, because we can be a lot more specific now that we're just dealing with one race, and we can really look at things in depth. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting mix regardless of how we do it, but I doubt we would restrict it to one class.
Very cool. Okay, so next question. If Drifter incursions are what was always in the card, when did AI versus AI interactions begin development, and what was learned along the way? Just to clarify for this, one of the previous restrictions of the AI was that AI were not able to fire at other AI. We've talked about this in previous events. However, during this series of live events was the very first time that an NPC an NPC AI fired upon another NPC AI without being scripted or anything like that. So that's obviously a huge thing and also a huge component to the requirements of the Drifter incursions. So why don't you talk about that real briefly?
I think we've been working on this since the end of last year. I was actually just asking Falcon and Delegate Zero to remind me. I know that my team were working on this, but it just seems to have been quite a long time now, but it's actually just been from the end of last year. At the start of it, we just wanted to improve NPCs. We wanted to have more life in space. I think when you're a new player and you undock for the first time, space can feel very daunting and sometimes very dead. Even though there are a lot of people there, they're in stations or they're hidden away in their own little camps. We just wanted to create like a busy atmosphere, especially around things like trade hubs. It feels nice to see like NPC activity, like how are the NPCs weaponizing themselves if they can't travel between stations and where they're fighting. It doesn't make sense to me also that you would have to go and talk to an agent to get a mission. You should just be flying through space and things should just appear around you. Things should be happening. There should be stuff that you should be able to interact with. And we're just on a journey to make that happen.
That's exciting. All right, General Stargazer has a question.
So I've seen it asked quite a few times now. Are the championships for the succession trials going to be televised?
That's the idea, yes. There'll be sections of them that will be. I think, obviously, I'm not going to confirm anything, but I think the way that we've been kind of spitballing ideas internally, we'll have, similar to what we did the AT this year, we'll have sort of an untelevised qualifying stage where we'll expose the API and then we'll look at televising some of it. And then obviously the final will be on the FanFest broadcast as the headline event. So yeah, there'll be elements of it that will be televised without a doubt.
Brilliant, thank you.
So will the final event at FanFest involve ships, or are they going to box for who takes over the Empire?
I think that we should initially have a fight on stage between ships, and then I think that everyone who's on stage has to wear robes and fight to the death. I think will be the best situation.
It's really the only way to go.
Right? All right, well, I'm ready to begin my training.
All right, hold on. We got to rein this back in. All right, so are there another question, which is from Ned Thomas on Twitter. Is there going to be any more love for Mimitar lore now that the Amar have been getting so much attention?
Well, as we've mentioned a few times, we're hopefully towards the end of this year, maybe next year, heading towards a 4-way war. So that will definitely introduce more storyline for the Minmatar, Galetea, Caldari. But I think Delegate Zero has some points he would like to make on this.
It's just a general point that we're aware that storylines for factions, there's a certain ebb and flow, and I know that sometimes when one faction is getting love, other people who have interest in the others feel a little left out, perhaps. But I mean, very much want all the main factions to have as much lore love as possible, and Minmatar certainly are up there. Galetea need a bit of time in the sun at some point for sure, and Caldari. So it's not for not wishing to do it for a given faction. It's just, limited what we can do at any given time.
Right. So our next question comes from I can't pronounce the in-game name, and I suspect that the Twitter name is maybe a real name, so I'm going to leave it out. But the question is, when will we know more about Caroline Starr? Not necessarily what more is going on, but is there any more information? Is that particular piece of information going to be exposed anytime soon?
I don't know about anytime soon, but the plan is that more will unfold about what lies behind the Caroline Starr event.
And it looks like Mac has a follow-up X on Stargates, so go for it.
So yeah, related question. We've been seeing Joe Stargates in the CC files. So will those allow us to perhaps investigate what happened in W477 TACK P, or allow us to enter Joe space? Silence. Falcon. Affinity.
Good night, everybody.
DelegateZero.
The gig's up, Makoto. They know you want in.
We all want in.
I think I would say that there's a long-term vision, and we don't really want to intrude on people's enjoyment of that long-term vision as it unfolds. So it's kind of a no comment, but
yeah,
there's some exciting stuff coming for you guys and for everyone.
And Minxie also has a question, which is particularly regarding the Thera presence for the Sisters of Eve. That kind of exploded and then kind of died away. Minxie is, of course, the head of the Signal Cartel, which do a lot of exploration and work with Thera quite a bit. She was wondering whether or not we're going to be able to unfold more about the SOE's presence there and what they're up to.
And that was a follow-on to the Minmatar lore question.
Their presence in Thera is kind of the unfolding of some threads that actually were started quite a long time ago. The Sisters of Eve are one of their particular story, as it were, and how it intertwines with the New Eden story as a whole is one of the longest running threads in the story of Eve, and it's going to continue. Sometimes it'll become visible and sometimes it will subside, but watch out for further developments as New Eden's storyline progresses.
Falcon, real quick, is Tukos as dead as spam?
What was that? Can you repeat that?
You said something about Jamyl being dead like spam. Is Tukos in the same situation?
Who knows?
Ooh.
Wow.
Winning.
All right. And then Uriel, I think you've got the final big question for them.
I just wanted to ask, are there any short-term or long-term plans to release another novel by any chance that isn't Tony Gonzalez?
Right now, there's no real plans. We haven't been talking about anything. Obviously, Delegate Zero said there's we're going to continue on with Chronicles, and there's one coming in the near future. But right now, no plans for any more books. At least not novels. That's it. Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
At least not novels.
Well, yeah. I mean, we've had Eve Source, we've had The Art of New Eden. There's not saying we might not do more stuff along that lines, more comic book stuff, that kind of stuff. But
Sweet.
yeah,
And like a ship technical book.
That'd be pretty cool. All right, so and then finally, we also got asked about a specific mission called the Anomaly, which is an Amarian mission that speaks of wormhole generation and other stuff like that. And if that was canon, I will say, and I'm sure somebody else would be able to say this too, but like wormhole technology isn't necessarily new. Like even the Stargates themselves use wormhole technology. And those missions came from before the Salient incident. So our understanding of unstable wormholes a little bit different when that was written. That being said, I don't see any big reason, having read the text of that specific mission, to believe that it has any impact on what is currently ongoing. But other people could feel free to disagree. And I am terrified to know that apparently Falcon has a question for us. So handing it over to Falcon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put you guys on the spot or anything. I was actually, when we were working on the events over the last few weeks, mainly the SAFIZON stuff, where we had sort of NPC versus NPC, I was actually just talking to DelegateZero about this the other day after one of the events. It was super cool to actually obviously see NPC on NPC sort of fighting, and actually seeing them shooting at each other and interacting with each other. Because one of the issues we've had with events for a long time has been scalability and being able to actually put enough butts in seats to sort of get big fleets together. And now with the NPC versus NPC stuff, we've kind of, we've been obviously dropping the Drifters in, we've been dropping the Amar Navy in, that kind of thing. And I was just wondering how you guys felt about sort of having a couple of event actors on field, and then us filling out the scene to make it more believable and to make it more interactive with NPCs who are shooting at each other. Do you guys kind of feel that that's a good thing? Then is it helped with immersion? And do you guys feel that it's, you've enjoyed events a little bit more, seeing these big set pieces? Or were you guys kind of more enjoying actually having...
I'd love to say about that. I personally think it's been really, really great, especially with the combat between the Drifters and the Amar Navy. I mean, the, simultaneous, well-organized fire, and then the ships all just, arcing around in circles and flying around. It's very pretty to watch, and it definitely adds a very nice layer of immersion.
I think that this is something that we should talk about ongoing, and if you have an answer to the question, please tweet CCP Falcon, because he would like to know. Unfortunately, for time constraints, I'm going to just have that answer be our collective answer, because I didn't see anybody disagree with that in any of the chats. And so, does that settle that for you, Falcon? Or
yeah, that settles it for us. I mean, I'd be interested to hear people tweeting at me and discussing it on Slack and whatnot, because it works really well for us. It's really nice, and the AI is working really smoothly. It seems pretty good. So yeah, it's good to hear that you guys are thinking positively about it, at least.
In the next couple of days, I'm planning on writing up a piece, a blog about my experiences at the Amar event, and at the Jamyl SARUM's death event, and I think you'll be pleased. Anywho, okay, so I think CCP Affinity, you had one last thing to say, and then we've really got to wrap it up. We are officially in our after time.
Yep, I just wanted to talk really quickly. I've actually had Sugar Kyle from the CSM start a little project for me, and I really want to know, for people that try to onboard new players into factional warfare, what are your main struggles? What can we help you with? What can we give you to support new players getting more fresh blood into factional warfare? If you could just tweet me about it, that would be great.
Thank you very much. So any feedback about the AI versus AI events, please tweet it to CCP Falcon. Any feedback about faction warfare specifically as a new player, send it over to Affinity. And with that note, I think we're just going to move on to final thoughts and close it out. So I'm just going to go right down the panel members, and hopefully this time I won't skip General Stargazer. So Anslo, what's your shout out?
Shout out to Scopeworks for working so hard over the summer. Shout out to all of our allies who came out from the woodwork and helped us out and helped us move along. Shout out to CCP for everything that they've been doing, and hopefully everything good continues. And hopefully a shout out to LOSEC, who will rise against the drifters, because if we don't, well, rest in peace all of our fleets. And Scopeworks is recruiting contact Anslo, Brylan Gray, or Iktashi Orden.
Uriel.
I just want to say I love the entire story arc going on right now. I'm wicked excited to hear more about it, and any little bit of information we have, we will theorize endlessly with. So I'm just happy to do that more and more as things go on. And we'll see who was right about what, and we just have to wait. And thanks so much for coming on, for having the show.
Ascentior.
G'day to all of the Amar role players, Amar loyalists. Obviously, there's a lot of Pi guys listening at the moment, I think, so g'day, guys. Thanks, CCP, for all the work you're putting into the events at the moment, but next time, can you make it last a bit longer? Because I keep getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and waiting an hour, and then it lasts like a minute.
Let's see. Definitely not General Stargate. No, General Stargazer.
Wow, what a guy. Shout out to you guys for putting these on. Shout out for CCP for organising these live events. Shout out to the F-Code guys that helped me organise the fleets for the live events. And shout out to the Galetea Militia guys, GMVA, My Alliance. Rock on.
Rhavas.
Shout out to the guys in SSC, and thanks to the CCP Lore Nerd group here. The story arcs that you've been working on for the last year have been great, and it's really cool to see some of the stuff get shaken up and twisted in unusual and different ways. So thanks for the work you guys keep doing.
Mac.
So a series of 3 in the first place, I have to say. The Talikan aren't dead. Also, Holy Mother of God, of Stargates in the database. And thanks for that. That has me no ends of excited. And lastly, Itsukame Zainu is recruiting, so hit me up.
Morwen.
Similar vein to Makoto. First thing is that wrote Capel, now that we are not having to fuss around with the AT anymore, we are actually opening recruitment again, so you can poke me or any of the other members of the directorate if you are interested. And the other thing is, since I didn't get to do this last time because I forgot and I'm a horrible person, I wanted to give a shout out to Max, as in Max Singularity, because, dude, what you're doing is really fucking awesome. It's amazing just how quick you got into things and just where it's gone. It's awesome to watch it.
Again, I was skeptical at first, but I'm definitely behind it too. Samira?
I'd like to repeat shoutouts to CCP for starting all this awesome lore. I'm very happy to see lore taking a front spot again. Shout out to Max as well. I'd also like to remind everyone that Giannis Artishapper is the best choice for Emperor. Fight for him.
Very cool. All right. And then to, of course, our special guests, CCP Affinity. Oh, never mind. I've been told that CCP Falcon is going to do the final thoughts on behalf of all 3 CCP members.
I guess I'm the one that talks the most. Yeah, I mean, shout out to everyone, all you guys, really. We wouldn't be doing this kind of stuff if it wasn't for the support you guys give, so big cheers for all you guys. Oh, and just to clarify, we might be called CCP Law Nerds on Mumble, but our actual official name at CCP is Team Murder Services, because of the carnage that we create and the number of people that we've assassinated over the last few years.
That's awesome. All right, well, that should just about do it. So on behalf of all of us at Hydrostatic Eve and all of the panelists and our guests from CCP, thank you all for joining us for the Hydrostatic Lore panel. And remember, it's not how much SP you have, it's what you know.
Nerds.